Well, this was a pretty interesting Krillin episode of Dragon Ball Super, and alrighty guys, it is Quadman here today, bringing you my episode 84 review of Dragon Ball Super, and I'm going to say this really briefly. I'm kind of changing up my style of doing Super reviews. I'm going to kind of talk about the stuff I liked, the stuff that I felt made the episode weak, and I'm also going to be talking about some of the discussion points that are kind of good water cooler conversation. So, let's get started. So, the thing that I felt made this episode really good is the slice of life element. They did a very good job of executing the fact that Krillin has a job, he has a normal life, he's moved on from, obviously fighting and doing all that stuff, and it kind of brought you back into Krillin fighting against crime as a police officer. And we also see a transition in his attitude, because as you guys would have remembered a couple episodes back, Krillin was scared from some of these bandits who had guns and stuff, but you could definitely see his confidence has gone up ever since he and Goku went back into that little training sequence again. So that was a good thing. Also, I like the fact that Android 18 had a lot of character in this episode. So, in order to motivate Krillin for the Tournament of Power, Goku had to also talk to Android 18 and talk to her about joining for winning money. And to me, this is kind of interesting because he's talking about, oh yeah, there's going to be a 1 million Zenny prize in all of this stuff, and you can immediately see Android 18, being more interested in it. And then later on, while Krillin is fighting against Gohan and Goku, you see Goku saying, oh yeah, this is where we're going to get the 100 million Zenny. And she's like, wait a minute, you just added zeros to this? So you can see like 18's definitely skeptical of that, and I felt it added a lot towards her character. 18 had great development and personification in this episode. And for Krillin, I think one of the best things this episode did is it created kind of a support circle for him. So we saw Krillin fighting against Gohan and Goku, and as he's doing it, he sees Marin, who's kind of cheering him on. And Goku surprisingly cheered on Krillin too, even though 18's was like, wait a minute, shouldn't you be rooting for your son? And Goku obviously wanted to be skeptical of, Krillin's abilities. And we see that Krillin feels like he's together, as we see when he was fighting against Goku and his Kamehameha had his clash against Goku Super Saiyan Blue Kamehameha. 18 jumped in, kicked the blast away, and I had some problems with this, which I'll talk about in a second, but it definitely made it seem like Krillin definitely has a good support circle. And this really emphasized the whole element of this new Tournament of Power is going to be more about teamwork instead of just the generic one-on-one battles. And the last thing I thought that was really good about this episode would have to be the new outro. The new song called Boogie Back. I think it's really great as we see, Bulma, she's driving, she's looking at her pictures, and you see like a transition in Bulma over time where you see her as a young girl with Goku, and then in the other picture you see her, with obviously Trunks and Vegeta. And you also get the chance to see a lot of the other characters who are very important in Bulma's lives, and it kind of added like a character feel to it. Like it felt like it was Bulma's outro, which was great. And it didn't just feel like a generic Dragon Ball outro that any other character could have had. Like, it felt strictly for Bulma, which is what made it great in my opinion. And I think the song had a very soothing and peaceful feel to it. So I'm definitely digging this new outro sequence, and the animation looked very good too. So those are the things that I would have to say made this episode good. Now, there are two problems I had with this episode. The first problem I had was that I think the fighting was completely fucking unrealistic and bullshit. And here's my thing, guys. I am an advocate for having the weaker Dragon Ball characters have shine in the Dragon Ball series. I'm in no way not wanting Krillin to have his moment. He definitely had his moment in this episode. I have no problem with that. It's just the way it was executed, which was the problem itself. Gohan and Goku are so far above Krillin that they have to hold back so much power to even make a fight look remotely competitive. And if they're really testing Krillin for the Tournament of Power, just in terms of power and speed, if 60% of the Tournament of Power fighters are stronger than Krillin, it's kind of irrelevant. However, I did started a little mini-series where I broke down some of the techniques that Krillin could use to fight against more powerful foes. So I'm not saying Krillin is useless. I'm just saying if you're gonna fight against Krillin, you gotta be a little bit more realistic here, because Krillin's fight with Gohan made some sense because Krillin blinded him and he just knocked him away. It was just literally a blindsided move, and we've learned in Dragon Ball that, you know, these Dragon Ball characters are not as durable as you think they are when they're off guard. So Krillin getting a sneak attack on Gohan made some sense, and you could also see that Gohan was clearly stronger than him when he hit him like twice and Krillin was like blown away like a fly. But the fight with Goku to me was the weakest part of this episode. It was fun to see them fight, and it's a good throwback to Dragon Ball when they would fight as kids. But when Goku went Super Saiyan Blue, to me this was kind of a killer for the episode, because Goku's holding back in an accelerated form, which makes no sense. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go to my most powerful form, but I'm gonna use 1/1,000,000th of my power in this accelerated form, versus, okay, I'm just gonna fight you competitively in my base form. Like, what's the difference? Like, what's the point of going Super Saiyan Blue if you're just gonna hold back so much in a Super Saiyan Blue? Like, if you're a Super Saiyan 3, like, you could use these power scaling bits, but if you're a Super Saiyan 3, but you're, like, using 10% of your power, then what's the point? You know what I'm saying? And it applies to all the forms. So, to me, that stuff was weak. I felt like that Kamehameha clash was a joke, because in essence, Goku should have kind of thought, hey man, I could easily blast this guy away, and obviously he was holding back, and it was weird to me how 18 is strong enough to kick away a Super Saiyan Blue's Kamehameha, so Goku must have been using a pathetic amount of energy in that Super Saiyan Blue Kamehameha, but obviously the episode tried to make it seem like it had some effect to it, which I felt made it weak in all forms of it, and honestly, it just didn't feel right. I feel like it felt like a fake way to make Krillin have relevance. They could have just stuck with the Gohan fight and just ended it there, or just extended the fight with Gohan to prove Gohan that he's wrong, and that, you know, Gohan being too skeptical of Krillin's abilities was definitely an off opinion. Now, the other thing I didn't like about this episode was Gohan himself. Now, this is gonna sound crazy, but to me, I feel like Gohan should be more aware of Krillin's abilities in a more modern era as opposed to Goku. Now, obviously, it sounds weird because Goku's been training with Krillin ever since he was a kid, but the thing you gotta understand is Gohan has fought with Krillin more recently. When you think about the Saiyan arc, Gohan fought with Krillin pretty much the entire fight, whereas Goku was only there for a piece of it when he fought against Nappa and Vegeta. And then when you also think about it later on the anime-only extra things they added while they were trying to travel to Namek, then you had all of the stuff on Namek itself, and then when you add little minor fights like the android, well, Krillin didn't really fight against the androids, but like, you know, the little fights against the Cell Juniors and stuff, Gohan has seen Krillin fight more than Goku, so in reality, Goku should have been the skeptical one because he hadn't really seen Krillin fight in such a long period of time. So that's another thing that I felt was kind of off about the episode. And to talk about some quick bullet points for discussion, some water cooler talk, I think Krillin's weight set, to me, doesn't really make sense. I go to the gym and he looked like he had regular gym equipment, and I felt that, hey Krillin, you're like a supernaturally powerful character, like you should be training with way more stuff than just regular gym equipment. So that was one thing I felt. One thing I love though is Krillin as a cop, I feel is extremely interesting, because I've always felt that if the Dragon Ball characters wanted a job, they could easily get a job in like a top secret military organization, kind of just traveling the world, fighting against, you know, Earth-like threats, not international intergalactic threats like that, of those sorts, but, you know, kind of just getting a top-notch job, because their power could definitely be of a great use. And I understand they might be more restricted or possibly in the public eye if certain information comes out, but these guys are so strong, what are you going to do to them anyways, you know what I mean? And, you know, the other thing that Geekdom and I have often talked about with Dragon Ball that I thought had to come up again is 18 and Krillin shouldn't need money. Now, Super and Dragon Ball Z has emphasized how much 18 loves money, but unless Android 18 has extremely high spending habits, with Bulma and with Hercule in their lives, I don't know how she still wants money. I mean, obviously, you always want to have more money. There's never such thing as having too much money. Well, there is, but that's a different conversation for another day. But the point is, 18 shouldn't be as money hungry as she is. She should have a lot of it. Like, 1,000,000 zenny should be nothing to her, considering, obviously, the money that Mr. Satan could have given, plus, you know, obviously getting some change from Bulma. So, her spending habits definitely must be off the charts. But overall, I think it was cool seeing all of Krillin's techniques coming back into play. And for this episode itself, I'd have to give it 3 stars. I mean, I felt the fight with Goku was really weak. I felt like they could have emphasized more with the Gohan fight and more with the development of seeing how Android 18 fights. Like, it would have been more interesting to see 18 actually fighting against Goku and Gohan alongside Krillin instead of just making Krillin do it. That way it would make it more realistic, like it's a team fight. You know, that's one thing I wish they had done, but obviously that's just how I would have written it. But overall, I would give it a 3 stars. It's a decent episode, nothing special, but it was alright and it had some good moments to it. And for my preview analysis, it looks like we're going to be seeing the Universe 11 characters coming into the fray. We see the Beerus-like character in Universe 11, and it seems like this episode is going to be a stark contrast between mixing the Universe 11 fighters and also seeing what's going on Earth. But the weird thing is, though, we see Goku fighting against this skinny Buu. Now, really briefly, guys, as you guys remember back in the Buu saga, Buu can kind of manipulate his body to look whatever way he wants. Like, he made himself look more handsome once by looking at a magazine. So, to me, Buu losing weight doesn't really make any sense because he's magic, but I think it's funny. And it doesn't make any sense why Goku would be sparring with Buu, because Buu's gonna be in the tournament anyways, so you might as well be focusing on the weaker characters that you haven't seen fight in a while, like Ten Shanhan or Tien and Android 17, as opposed to Buu when you just saw him kick Basil's ass. But either way, guys, those are my thoughts on this episode. It was alright. I had some criticisms, but for the most part, I thought it was a very passable episode. And I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below, and let me know what you think about this new super review style. I think I can go way more in depth talking like this as opposed to trying to go scene by scene. So with everything else said, guys, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.